Hello, everybody. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live. We have Karim Kuperhause, and I'm a big fan. If you haven't noticed just yet, of being very organic, original, and natural on these LinkedIn Lives. Last week, Karim, I had Paul King and John Gamba, two Philadelphia sports guys. And I didn't tell them what was coming off the top. And the way we started is I said, before we get going on the breaking the grade, can you guys get your Philadelphia crap out of the way? Talk Eagles, talk Phillies, so that we can all move on. And they did that. So I'm going to give you the same treatment. And I'm going to be honest about something. Okay? You and I are about to have a conversation about people in the education space who have made the mistake, probably more than once, of trying to delegate their sales process before they have figured out their sales process themselves. Now, here's the honest part. Last night, I went to the opening game of the Washington Capitals. And I was back sitting in those seats thinking, we really have a chance to win this thing. We can win the Stanley Cup. There's no way the Caps are winning the Stanley Cup. You know, I'm not an odds person, but they have a less than 3% chance of winning the cup. And why is that? Because they can't. This is what chat tells me. They have an aging core. They have tough divisional competition. They can never win in the playoffs. And there's some other underlying metrics that, despite a surprisingly strong performance in 24-25 regular season, many analytical models suggest the Caps are not on the same level as other elite teams. But I was back there sitting, cheering, thinking we got this.
Go for it.
Karim Kuperhause, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Josh. It's a real honor. And I'm glad you weren't going to talk about the Blue Jays. Because
no,
they showed the way yesterday.
I stay away from baseball a little bit right now. And especially, because I might have a little bit of baseball guilt because I sit here in Washington and you're sitting in Montreal.
Yeah.
And we kind of grabbed your team.
Well, we have our one Canadian team, which is the Blue Jays. And so although there's a huge rivalry between Montreal and Toronto in terms of hockey, when it comes to baseball, we root for Toronto.
Wonderful. And I'm proud of them for knocking off the Yanks.
Yeah.
Karim, if you can, please give people a quick kind of update on who you are and your history. And then we are going to get into this topic here of a mistake that many ed tech founders have made, and potentially multiple times, when it comes to delegating their sales before really figuring it out themselves. But first, floor is yours. Tell us who you are, please.
Sure. My name is Karim Kuperhause. I like to tell people I started my sales career as a kindergarten teacher. I did my Bachelor of Education here in Montreal at McGill University, went on to do my master's, was an elementary school teacher for 12 years, and then transitioned to EdTech sales, which I've been doing now for the last, 15 years or so. And so I work with different EdTech companies, trying to get them to grow and scale. And you're bringing a great topic to the conversation because it actually came up this week. I was talking to a startup out of Toronto, actually, and he was ready. He said he's built this platform. It's a student information system for private schools, and he was ready to hire somebody in terms of sales because he just didn't have enough time to sell it. I was like, that's great. How do you sell your platform? He goes, I have no idea. And I was like, if you don't know how to sell your solution, how are you going to train and mentor this sales rep that you plan on hiring to sell your solution if you don't even know how to sell it yourself?
And what was his response?
He just had an aha moment. He was like, oh, he was like, oh, I was hoping he was going to figure it out. And he says, and that's why I'm on the call with you, because I'm trying to figure it out myself. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before you go out and hire somebody, you need to actually figure out as a founder how you would sell it. And if there's a market for it in the first place. And then once you've ironed that out, then you can go out and start thinking about, do I actually bring on talent to help me?
One of the aha moments I had talking with my team, talking with my chat GPT, which is trained up to know me really well, and the Ed Sales Elevation experiences, we came to this idea that delegating sales too early is the fastest way to stall your pipeline,
Yep.
to lose leads, and to waste months of effort. Have you seen that before? Obviously, it sounds like it reared its ugly head this week, but when else have you seen that happen where delegating sales too early can actually stall your pipeline, lose you leads, and waste months of effort?
I've seen it over and over again at different stages. I mean, obviously, I've seen it at the startup stage, which is the easiest to pinpoint. But I've seen it with mature companies as well. And so I've traditionally done a lot of help around growth and scale for US companies trying to enter the Canadian market, or vice versa, Canadian companies, ed tech companies trying to enter the US market. And what they'll often do is just spin up a team and say, all right, go sell, right? If you're a US company, go sell into Canada, or vice versa. The Canadian team spins up a team and says, go sell into the US, not truly understanding how to sell in that market. And you can almost also see it internally within the US. If you're a company based out of, I don't know, Florida, and you are trying to, and you're done really well in Florida, or maybe you're based in Jersey and you've done really well in Jersey with local school districts, and then you decide, you know what, we're going to go expand into California.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same. It's a different market. And if you don't prepare ahead of time and you don't develop a sales process for that market, you're going to be spinning your wheels, and you're going to be wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of money, wasting a lot of resources.
Burning leads.
All kinds.
Burning opportunities. That's such an interesting point that you bring up. In my second business, when we were in the aftercare space, we were in 6 states: DC, Maryland, Virginia, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. We might as well have been 6 different countries.
Yeah.
And DC, Maryland, Virginia, you can go to all 3 of those in I think probably a span of 10 minutes, because you can be in DC, cross into Virginia over the bridge, and then cross another bridge. You're in 10 minutes, but it's like selling in 3 different countries.
Yeah.
So really great point about being prepared. And I think that a lot of people, founders, this is what I hear. They'll come back to me, and when we start talking to them about how to get them repeatable sales, they'll say, you have. I hired somebody in the education space who knows how to sell, and they mishandled a lead, or my AI tools, they're not closing the way I thought they should. Okay, that happens. Talk to me about what, when you were closing, what was working for you? Oh, no, that's not for me. No. I'm not the salesperson. And so I've had that conversation over and over again. To me, founder-led sales is non-negotiable. And that could be from companies that have made no money. And we work with companies that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But the connection between a company that's made no money and a company that's made hundreds of millions of dollars in the education space is they might not have leads on repeat. Because you can be a $10 million company and have one contract that makes up $9 million. Therefore, you don't have those leads on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I pull the founder back in and I say, you're going to need to lead these sales. And guess what? When it happens, and it recently happened for a client of ours, it was one of the greatest things that this founder has ever done for his company. Hopped back in, got control, really understood the process, and it's really natural, and now it's on repeat. So prove me wrong. Founder-led sales is non-negotiable. Is it negotiable?
It's not. That's where it all starts. And I would argue that it's becoming more and more important because it's so much easier now to get into the edtech space, especially if you're building AI native. I mean, you can take any legacy system out there right now and duplicate it in a very short period of time. And so if you're going to do that as a founder, you really need to understand if there's actually a need to create a native AI version of it. And which means you need to have boots on the ground. You need to be close to the people who are going to be using your platform. And it's during that conversation, during that back and forth, where you're co-building with your potential customers, right? That you truly start understanding what the value proposition is, what you're really solving for. Because if you're just copying an existing legacy system, you're not really solving for anything. Maybe you'll be able to offer the same platform at a lower price, but you're not really solving for anything. And so that founder-led initiative, that founder-led growth, that founder-led co-building with your potential prospects and your customers is key. That's how you unlock the entire thing.
And when you are co-building, you are potentially there in the room, virtual or not, to hear objections. And Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the objections and the rejections that we get. Sometimes they hurt. Doesn't mean they won't hurt or sting or suck. But those objections, those early calls, let you test the offer, refine the messaging, build that repeatable clarity. You know, obviously we're talking about, yes, if you are co-building a product, but you're also kind of co-building the sales process.
That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly
with the people that you're talking to.
And the worst thing that can happen to you is to get some really early success.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need that feedback in the beginning that says, that pushback, and that negative feedback that says, no, this is not what we're looking for, or no, this is not solving for this, or no, this is not really adapting to our needs. Because if you have that early success too early, you're going to double down on it, not truly understanding what all the blind spots are. And so that initial feedback is so key, and it needs to be critical.
That's so interesting. And I think that, and by the way, everybody, we Karim and I haven't talked for a couple of weeks. So all this is a true natural conversation here. What you're saying, I think, is at the root of the, why we have businesses, is that a lot of people in the education space who, maybe they're a teacher, they see the solution, they know the problem, they can solve it. They go to their principal and say, I want to try this out. Great. Principal says, it's okay, minimal success, but yeah, this is great. You're really helping a lot. And then that wonderful teacher says, hey, can you tell principal so-and-so down the road? Okay, and they tell principal so, and you get to 3 or 4 schools and you think you've conquered the world. Mm-hmm. And so you have that early success. And as opposed to kind of having those early tough conversations that lead to, I think, more success further down the road and a more scalable product. Have you ever experienced that? Because you started your own businesses, yes?
Yep.
And can you kind of take us back to when you started your business? Because I want people to know that you're not just sitting here, sitting on in your ivory tower here. You've been there, done that. You've rolled up those sleeves.
Yeah, it was interesting because we came, you and I are in our businesses were in a similar space. I was in the after school market as well, in terms of tutoring. And it actually started very humbly, me tutoring students after school. So I was teaching during the day, and then some parents in my neighborhood where I lived wanted tutoring. for their kids. And so I was doing that after school. And through a friend of a friend, there was a local school principal who was looking to actually have tutoring after school. And we got connected. And that following year, I ran an after school program in that principal's school. Super successful. Everything went great. And so the following year, there's a second principal down the street, and then a third principal. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was running programs in 12 different schools. And they were all within sort of close vicinity, give or take, to where I lived. And so I was hiring tutors. And what happened is that it was really hard to manage all of these tutors. And at the time, I was looking at possibly opening up a Kumon franchise. And it dawned on me, I'm like, why would I pay all these fees to open up a Kumon franchise when I'm a teacher? I know it all, right? I got my Bachelor of Education. I've ran all these programs. Surely I don't need Kumon to tell me how to run a tutoring center. So I opened up a tutoring center. Part of it was to service these kids that we weren't already servicing in these after-school programs. Part of it also was to have a base for all these tutors to come and get resources and materials and what have you. And so it served two roles. And I had some early success, but it wasn't great success. And I think that the real benefit in having that tutoring center wasn't so much of these tutoring programs that I was running. It was really to support the tutors, because the challenge with these tutoring programs was you could have in the after school programs is that you could only do an hour or two after school. And if you as a tutor wanted more hours, that was it.
Right.
But now by having a tutoring center, those tutors who wanted more hours could come to my tutoring center afterwards and finish out the evening with other students. And so that the model in the end ended up being not so much to service students for the tutoring center, that is, it was really more of an opportunity to help find a way to retain my tutors and give them the support that they needed. And so in the end, that became gravitas for my tutoring centers. And so I ended up opening another one at the other part of town because I started running a lot of programs in schools, directly in schools in that part of town. And then I did that again in another part of town. So at one point I had 3 tutoring centers, and they're all doing fine in terms of a standalone. But the real benefit came from actually providing a location, a focal point for my tutors to come and get support and additional hours. And so it was interesting because had you told me from the onset that the purpose of these tutors was really not so much for the students and the parents, but really to help support the tutors, I would have said, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. Doesn't make sense. But in the end, that's the model, and that's how it developed. And I never would have figured that out had I not actually just gone into it. And that's part of the process, right, of starting a business is you can plan all you want. You don't get clarity until you start building and putting it out there and seeing how the market reacts. So that feedback is key.
Okay, so you're telling me the Caps have a chance to win the Cup? Because you just got to get on the ice, right? You got to get on the ice. You just got to try.
A chance. Well, my money's on Edmonton.
Yeah, they're number one. It looks like Edmonton's got the best odds at this point.
Although I have to root for the Canadians. Yeah.
The Canadian
for the folks on this call. I was born in Quebec City, and so I grew up as a Nordiques fan.
Right.
And when they were shipped off to Colorado, and that same year Colorado won the Cup,
that's heartbreaking.
That was heartbreaking. I actually boycotted hockey for years. Yeah. And then finally I ended up moving to Montreal. And if you don't drink the Kool-Aid here, if you don't go to Montreal Canadiens, you're putting your life in mortal danger. So I am now a Canadiens fan.
Canadians are 50-1. Caps are 30-1. Robert Martellacci. I am going. I'm not sure if you made your plans to go to the EdTech Week up in Toronto.
He was just asking me earlier this week if I was coming. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Let me see.
Oh, come on.
He says, well, Josh is going to be there. I'm like, oh, Josh is going to be there. And then, all right, I'll try harder.
He and I are going to go. I feel like I've died and gone to heaven. He and I are going to go to a Leafs game on Tuesday. And I'm not saying that you have to do this because you're following in Robert's footsteps. But a couple of weeks ago, Robert was on this show and he sang the Canadian national anthem.
Oh, my goodness.
not saying you have to. But by the way, your fellow Canadian did sing the Canadian national anthem.
And
I'm going to take
what
us.
was what's the purpose of that?
It happens to be my favorite national anthem, so I
funny.
let that out of the bag. And apparently he's been known to sing it before. And I can tell you that me and my friends, specifically Nick and Mark, have been known to sing the Canadian national anthem outside of bars late at night ourselves, which is how I learned it.
So technically, you know that the way to sing the Canadian national anthem is to sing it in two languages, English and French. Did Robert do that?
No.
Oh.
Are you suggesting you want to one-up Robert?
Well, I don't want to one-up Robert. I'm just saying.
I would want to.
But I can teach you the
Robert.
French version, and then you can go and sing that coming out of games.
Might have to do that offline. When we talk about delegating and delegating too early, I want people to kind of have a checklist of some signals that they may be getting that they have delegated too early. Some of those signals might be stalled deals. Some of those signals might be inconsistent messaging. Some of those signals might be lost momentum. Pick one of them if you can. Stalled deals, inconsistent messaging, and lost momentum. And can you talk through one of them from personal experience in your own business or companies you have helped, where you said, you know what, I think this might be your big problem here. Stalled deals, inconsistent messaging, and lost momentum.
Inconsistent messaging, I think, is the most important one to me, anyway, because what the founder usually is able to do is create a narrative. I just got off the phone recently with an edtech builder out of Poland, and she's built an assessment for preschool and developmental assessment. And she was able to really explain why she did it. And she had a friend, and she had lots of friends who were concerned because their kids didn't seem to be at level. And it turns out one of them was autistic. And so she had a story behind it. She had her why, right? Most founders have a why. And that comes across in their founder-led sales process. Even if they don't have a process that they've documented and fleshed out, it comes out. Their story comes out, their narrative, right? And they're in control of that narrative. When you delegate your sales to somebody else, unless you have explicitly taught, right, mentored that narrative to your sales rep or your sales team, you're going to lose that narrative. And so these folks, these sales reps, are going to invent their own narrative, and maybe it'll be aligned with your narrative, but most likely it will not. Or they might, because they've sat in on calls with you as the founder, they might pick and choose certain things that resonate, and then sort of will build their own narrative around that. And I think that is dangerous, because ultimately you want alignment. You want that narrative to be locked down and part of your sales process, because that's how you ensure that you're really selling value and not features. That story is key. And that's something I learned from this guy. I don't know if you know Mike Kleba.
No.
Fascinating gentleman. And Ryan O'Hara. I think they're going to be at Tech Week in a couple of weeks. And
are they fellow Canadians?
No, they are. No, they're from the US. I think actually, I wonder if they're not even from New York. I'll have to double check. I actually met them through an IAI conference. And anyway, they talk a lot about being in charge. If you're not controlling your own narrative, somebody else will, right? And their take on that was really around superintendents, where if you as a superintendent are not in control of the narrative of your school district, and somebody else will. The parents will, the community will, the students will, so on and so forth. And so it's really, really important to be in charge of your narrative. And the only way to ensure that your sales team is following that narrative is to explicitly teach them that narrative and make it part of your sales process.
I agree. And the pushback then that I get from most of the folks that I work with who are educators or product people is, okay, I'll do this, but I want to get out of the sales process and the selling business as fast as I can. Fair. They want to get back to their zone of genius. So how does somebody, a salesperson, an account executive who eats and sleeps and breathes sales, how do they then step in and tell the story of that founder as well or as best they can when they're not the founder? How do they step into that role? How do you eventually hire that person?
It's a great question. And I think ultimately it comes, first of all, that salesperson has to drink the Kool-Aid, has to fundamentally believe in the founder's story and make it their own, right? You look at the story behind Alpha Schools and its founder, Mackenzie Price. They have a very clear story about what they're doing. And that story is infused in everything that happens on social media. It happens everywhere in their sales process. It happens in their schools. And you can point to a lot of other companies who are doing the same thing. That story, that founder-led story has to be part and parcel of the whole package. And it comes down to ultimately that salesperson, that sales team believing in the solution that they're selling. Because if you believe in it and you believe in the founder's story, then that will come across in the way you communicate with your prospects.
And you are drinking specifically that Kool-Aid of Alpha Schools, right? Like, if I understand correctly, and we can tell more about how the work you do with them, but it just dawned on me from what you were saying that founder-led sales, and maybe I'm just getting to this party, but founder-led sales doesn't mean that it's the founder always delivering the message.
No.
Can you be an account executive or a salesperson and still doing founder-led sales because it's based on the founder? Am I just getting to this party?
You can. And I think you'd actually, at that point, don't need the founder anymore, as long as there's a way to showcase the founder's story. And maybe it's because, the founder is constantly on social media, sharing their story, sharing their narrative. Maybe it's in blogs, maybe it's in a newsletter, maybe it's at conferences, or maybe what you do is later in the sales process, when you're getting close to closing a deal, you bring in the founder for a cameo, right? And that's something I've done a lot in the past, especially with the smaller, I've worked with a number of sort of smaller scale-ups where I have come in as salesperson number one, right? And it's all been founder-led. And so as a founder, I can understand how you would be scared to just hand it off, but you do, because you got so many other things going on. And the reason that you're bringing on the salesperson is because you don't want to deal with sales anymore. But you do have to, but being able to liberate yourself to do those cameos once in a while is so powerful, because you come in to reinforce that story and ultimately to close the deal.
Where we always like to kind of give some action items for people who are listening, and who will be listening as we re-air this next week, and people have access to it past that. One of the things that people can do is they can essentially audit their own offer.
Yep.
Can you explain your offer in 30 seconds? or less. And if not, you need to refine it before you delegate. This is something that I think rears its ugly head quite often at conferences, like an ASU GSV, and you go to the conference and talking to a founder and say, what do you do? And they just ramble for 3 minutes.
Yep.
And I think 30 seconds is generous. I think it should be, probably half of that.
I agree.
It kind of goes back to your LinkedIn headline and the formula we use. I help who, using what method, get which results.
Exactly.
I help who, using what method, get which results. So talk about the fact that it's probably a bad sign if it takes you 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 30 to tell people what your offer is.
I agree. And if you, I know a lot of people don't believe in cold calling anymore, but I'm here to say that cold calling works. During a cold call, you have to be able to say in literally 10 seconds or less what you do. It's one sentence. And that one sentence should be enough to capture the person's attention if it's something that is aligned with what they're working on, right? And so I totally agree. 30 seconds is too long. 20 seconds is probably too long. You should be able to do it in less, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, in one sentence, right? And to distill that into one sentence takes a lot of thought. But once you figure that out, then it makes everything downstream a lot easier because it narrows your focus.
The fact that you said cold calling is not dead. Like I'm in love with that.
Are we opening up a new can of worms here?
Well, we can take a little bit of a detour from a success rate. I think cold calling is pretty tough to get past the front office staff who's picking up the phone. Negative. The positive is exactly what you just said, that if you can get past that person, that front office staff, and if you can reach the president of the university or the principal or whoever your main stakeholder is, if you can get them to lean in less than 15 seconds, then you have clearly demonstrated who you are, how you can help them, and what your transformational offer is. So that, in and of itself, is a really challenging exercise for people who are trying to get good at this. We happen to do that through LinkedIn. We have what we call a raise your hand campaign. And we build the list of people we want to talk to. We put together an amazing profile for our clients that is a sales funnel and not their resume. And then we start reaching out to people. And if that messaging is clear, then it's my belief, if the messaging is clear when you reach out via LinkedIn to the right person and they see your profile is credible, then they are more likely to lean in and say, I'll spend 15 minutes on the phone with you.
Right.
You're taking it one step further.
Yeah, and I love the LinkedIn approach. It's the approach that I use personally. A lot of it obviously gets generated because I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting, but I know what happens. Somebody sees a post and it resonates. It aligns with their thinking. They go and check my experience, my background, my profile, and they're like, "Oh, this aligns with somebody I want to speak with." And so either they will reach out to me directly through DM, or I will reach out to them because I see an alignment as well. But I would argue that if you really want to take that to the next level, you cold call that person. One of the strategies that I use, this was with a Canadian-based ed tech company that was trying to get into the US market and had faltered a few times, just couldn't get in. And we built a strategy around proximity. And what I mean by that is they were literally 10 minutes from the US border. And, you know, the US is a big market. There are over 14,000 school districts. If you're a school district that's based on the other side of like Syracuse or Rochester, New York, what's the incentive to go and try to get a client in California?
Right.
Or Texas? No, you start with New York. And a lot of people would argue, well, wow, New York, that's the hardest state to get into with the BOCES and the RICs and the regulations and then this and then that. But my argument was like, no, this is, first of all, it's the least expensive in the sense of you can literally get in your car and go to each one of these school districts in upstate New York. For anybody knows New York, most of the school districts outside of New York City are very small.
Right.
Rural, right? You can literally hit up 4 or 5, maybe even 6 school districts in a day. So that's what we did. Got in our car and drove from one school district to the other. So instead of actually cold calling over the phone, we cold called in person.
Take it one step further.
Take it one step further. And now there's no way you can do this with a large school district in New York City, or, you know, it's not like you're going to walk into CPS but for these small rural districts, this Canadian showing up, right? And I would show up with like maple cookies.
You guys are the nicest.
Right. And so there's I really believe that cold calling is not dead. And if you can take it one step further and cold call in person, I think there's real value in that. As long as you're very honest and upfront when you show up, people, generally speaking, will welcome you with open arms, because nobody does that anymore. We've moved away to these Zoom calls, to AI, to automated communications. People crave face-to-face contact. I think that's why we're seeing this resurgence of conferences right, left, and center, because people want that face-to-face contact. And so I think there's an opportunity here for, especially if you're a small startup and you're founder-led, to go and actually just show up and say, hey, can we have a conversation about whatever it is that you're, helping? Maybe it's MTSS, maybe it's, mental health, or maybe it's assessment, or whatever it is. I think there's a world where, I think we're in a world right now that welcomes that. Whereas a few years ago, people would have sort of shied away from people just showing up at their school.
And let's be clear, the conversation could be around coaching. Tell me what your challenges are, and let's have a strategy session right here, right now. Boom, let's go.
Yep.
It's people who are listening to this later probably won't see my face, but I was laughing because as you were saying that, I was thinking of Sebastian Maniscalco, the comedian, who does this whole bit on, how when we were growing up, we'd be sitting around and,
the door,
somebody knock on the door,
right? Aren't you embarrassed?
Yeah, and we, your mom would bring the Sanka, you welcome them
out,
in, she'd get you out of the way,
Duncan Hines.
Yeah, now, and this happened to us a couple of days ago. Somebody knocked on our door in our apartment building, and we're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? You open the door first. Yeah. Everybody gets down, and you army crawl. So now, I'm thinking about what you're saying. Do you know Rose? Do you know our mutual friend Rose? I believe you know Rose. Rose is here in the chat here, and I don't know if Rose is available right now, but I'm going to try something here. And I've got Rose because we were texting via WhatsApp. Let's just get this room filled with Canadians. I don't know if Rose is up for it, but Rose, I have just sent you a link to join us. And Rose said, love the strength of founder story, being the fire. She has such a way with words, being the fire that lights the pipeline, ignites the connection, awesome takeaway and scalable approach. And there's our friend Rose. Rose has been through the Ed Sales Elevation experience and is a big fan and proponent of what we do. Let's see if she can join. Rose, you're welcome to join whenever you want. The fact of the matter is, whether you do this via LinkedIn, whether you do this on the phone, whether you do this in person, is most likely we are surrounded by Canadians. I love this. Do you know Ben Buchwald? I
Nope.
launched LE.com
Hey,
22
Ben.
years ago in Winnipeg. We still don't have any salespeople at the company. I still lead a lot of demos each week and still love it. We do no
Good for
outbound
you.
sales. Everything is word of mouth. Inbound sales, product-led growth, and founder-led growth has been what has got us into thousands of schools in the US and Canada. Ben, hold on, Ben. I got something for you. Ben. That's for you, Ben. That's for you. That's all of the ed tech space cheering for you. Now, when you are doing founder-led sales, LinkedIn, email, phone, in person with your maple cookies, you're going to get objections.
Of course.
There will be objections. How do you map your objections? How do you think about those objections? How do you learn from those objections? There is Rose.
There she is.
Hey.
Hey, Rose.
Hi.
Do you guys know each other?
No.
Not yet.
Do we?
We will.
No. All right.
This is amazing. This conversation while you're working, I'm like listening to what you're saying, and I'm like working on all of my founder stories as we're talking. So I'm like in it. Thank you guys.
Welcome, Rose. Rose, tell Karim and everybody else who you are real quickly, and then let's hop into this discussion of founder-led sales here so people stop delegating.
Excellent. I am Rose Hustreiter. I am the founder of L3C Learning and Leadership. We've been around for a long time. I build experiences that help people reconnect with their time and discover their purpose and basically strengthen their connection to each other. So that is my number one thing, is all about connection. So all the projects we do are about helping people develop skills that lead them to better collaboration connection. Josh, working with 3E has been absolutely amazing, because it's a constant iteration of like getting better, evolving our sales process and our so this conversation came at the right time. Just thank you both for holding it today.
So Rose, just because I'm only know a limited amount of places in your wonderful country, can you tell us where you are so Karim knows where you are?
Karim, I understand you're in Montreal. I'm about 7 hours away by car. So bonjour, Montreal.
Bonjour.
Southwest New Brunswick, in the beautiful town of St. George, Brunswick, on the Bay of Fundy. I'm originally from Vancouver. So go Canucks.
Okay. Yes. You're a long way from home.
I am. I moved here many years ago to expand my company. I spend a lot of my time in the States. So again, the conversation around our different regions and how we move into those markets is also very valuable for a lot of us here in Canada, because we have family, we have friends, we have networks all across North America. So,
do you know your fellow maritimer Julia Dexter from Shoelace Learning?
The name sounds familiar. I don't think I know him personally.
I gotta introduce the two of you. Yeah, she's built. So Shoelace Learning is a great reading application for middle schoolers, where they've been able to combine reading, language comprehension, and I believe not Roblox, but what's the other one? It escapes me right now. Anyway, they'll come back to me. They've got and they're running these wonderful tournaments to get kids to read. And so anyway, I'll put the two of you in touch.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we specialize in the workforce area. So everything you're speaking of, whether it's children K-12 or into the big kids, as I like to say, this conversation right now is so critical, because I think a lot of the solutions that founders have need to get to market. So again, thanks guys for holding this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would put Karim, or I would put Rose, and I certainly would put Robert up against anybody in terms of speaking ability and willingness to listen, but those that does not come easy for everybody. So Rose, when you joined, I was basically asking Karim, like, what do you do with the feedback that you get when the feedback isn't always what you wanted to hear? How can you receive that feedback and then use that to build a better sales approach or to build a better product? How have you managed that in your current companies? Feedback.
My instinct says, I know we all want to say, well, actively listen and listen to understand, but I think there's the word of intention. It's like, come back to the basics. That's what I have to do, is I have to come back to the basics and go, where's that true north for me, my company? Like, where's the heart and spirit and just the essence of the project? Like, where are we headed? In order for me to receive feedback, I need to check in on my own intention as to why I even asked for it in the first place and what's the outcome for the team. So that's kind of where my head goes, is to actively listen, but listen to understand that the intention of the feedback is often to help us meet that target. So listen with that open mind. It happens every day here at this company. It's like we're constantly iterating and it's not always going to work. But there's a lovely saying, I think it's an old Japanese saying, which is, fall 7 times, stand up 8. It's like iteration is part of the process of evolving our sales process, and getting the right message to the right person at the right time. And I wish there was just a simple formula for that. And I think, Karim, everything you've noted here just resonates so deeply with me, because as a founder, we cannot stop learning. We cannot stop trying things like cold calling. Like, you just busted the myth for me, cold calling right there. You busted
Me
it for
too.
Yeah.
Out of the fucking water.
Because,
out of the water.
All right.
Karim, I'm curious to hear from you. Sometimes, going back to this concept of feedback, what do you think the stories are that us founders, that we tell ourselves, that are getting in our way? Like cold calling, we can't do that. That doesn't work. Like, what have you noticed about that?
I think ultimately, a lot of this comes down to, how do you know that you know? Right? When we all have these assumptions and these myths that say, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. And listen, I have 2 teenagers. Actually, so that's true. One's 18, the other one's 21. So my older one's not really a teenager anymore. And I'll put something out there, and they'll say, well, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? Right? And these assumptions started a long time ago. And cold calling is one of those assumptions where cold calling doesn't work. And I think at the end of the day, we have to constantly put ourselves in a position where we ask ourselves, how do we know that we know? And the feedback often that we get from prospects, from clients, what I think is super important about that feedback is really understanding the why behind that feedback. Because a lot of the feedback we'll get as a founder is, oh, you should build this feature, or you should build that feature, or you should do this and you should do that. And then you go out and build it, and all of a sudden it doesn't resonate. And the reason it doesn't resonate is you never understood the why. And that happens a lot in the sales process as well, right? In terms of objections. They'll say, oh, what about this? And what about that? And why not this? And if you don't dig in and really try to understand, why are they asking that question? Maybe they don't actually need that feature. Or maybe that's not the real problem they're trying to solve. You have to really unpack it and figure out, what is it ultimately that they're trying to solve for? And then that can become part of your iteration, both in terms of either your product or your sales process. And once you figure that out, once you understand the why, that's the unlock. Because now that whatever you build will apply to anybody who has that same why. And then, so you've identified the why, you've validated it, and then you build it, you test it out, and it works, then you amplify it, right? And that now becomes part of your sales process. And so in my mind, the feedback is so crucial, but it's even more important to unpack that feedback and understand what's behind the objections. Because what the prospect is telling you at that first level is never the real problem.
How do you, let's talk real tactically here. How do you phrase that? Somebody gives you an objection, and how do you phrase it without sounding defensive to really take it to the next level to understand their why? Can you kind of role play a little bit here? Like, tell us how you would say something like that.
You generally have to be curious, right? So I was on a call earlier today with the district, and I was explaining to them that for a certain solution, they're going to have to assess the students, and they're going to have to use MAP scores. And then they were like, "Oh, we don't use MAP, we use iReady." I'm like, "Okay." And then we kept on going, and then we came back to it. I said, the question then become the real issue wasn't about whether you're using MAP or you're using iReady to assess your students. The real issue underlying it all was we hate to over-test kids. Right? We especially in the US, there is a massive amount of testing going on, standardized testing. It happens in September, October. It happens again mid-year, and then again at the end of the year. It consumes a lot of time that should really be devoted to teaching, but it's actually being devoted to assessments. And so the underlying question there was around what can we do to minimize the time that is spent on assessments, because we really want to get to the good stuff, which is teaching kids. But it came across in the beginning to, "Oh, we don't do MAP testing, we do iReady." But that wasn't the real objection. They really don't care. At the end of the day, they don't care about MAP or iReady. What they really cared about is to minimize the time, right, that is devoted to testing, because it's just, it really does not, as a teacher, that's not what you're there to do. You're there to teach. Obviously, you need the data from the tests, but most teachers don't actually use that data anyway. They just do the MAP testing and then go about their business without actually looking at the results. So that's a different tangent we can go on.
Karim,
but that's one example, Josh, right?
Yeah.
That's a great,
go ahead,
great example. I'm so hearing something here. We're always taught, are we solving for the right problem? But Karim, I'm hearing you say, are we solving for the deep problem?
Yeah.
Which is really
so
powerful.
My wife is a psychotherapist. She's an art therapist. And her job is always to, right, peel back the layers. Because ultimately there's always an emotion behind whatever behavior is going on. And so it's the same thing with objections. That objection, when it comes out, is never the real objection. There's something behind that, and ultimately an emotion, right? And that's what you have to get to in order to truly build a sales process that knows how to handle objections, but ultimately prevent those objections from even coming up in the first place.
Rose knows this very well. We have our signature solution, which is generally in the 6th and 7th week of the Ed Sales Elevation Experience. And that signature solution is the clearest representation of your offer. And it's basically built on objections and rejections. So to Karim's point, now that you understand that this potential client is talking about testing, then that could be something that you drop, as a crumb or as a big, piece of bread when you're having your next conversation, and say, we're very cognizant of testing. And so this is not our desire to over test, but ... So we can use that as an opportunity to let people know that we've been listening and we're more aware. Last point here. We've talked about when, it's called stop delegating sales, why founders must sell first or lose pipeline. Now, when is the moment that you can say, I'm ready for somebody to take over? What's that green flag?
If you can repeat it over and over again, then that means you can scale it, right? Because the real key to repeatable, scalable sales process is the repeatable part. If you can't replicate it over and over and over again, then you don't have a process. It hasn't been systematized yet. And only then can you actually bring in your first sales rep, coach them on it, right? And then put them out there, give them the feedback. Because if you don't have a process that you've been able to repeat over and over again and systematize and document, then you can't scale.
And go ahead, Rose.
Josh was saying that's where I think that Raise Your Hand campaign was really, really successful for us, because it allowed us to test and learn the process of even testing the message. Like for us in my LX technology company, Humanity, we focus on this one pain point, which is less than 15 minutes of every hour of online learning is relevant to the learner and the organization, right? So we tested that. And out of all the other ones we tested, that gave us the most feedback as to, okay, that's better for our sales story and for our pipeline when we start making those partnerships happen. So again, I really feel like raising your hand and really iterating those tests really helpful for us anyways. And it's something we've modeled into our behavior in our business every day. Like we keep testing new ideas and new pain points and making sure that those are relevant to where we're at now in our company.
It's based on what we've heard today and the mind-blowing discussion that Rose and I and others have been on the other side of, especially regarding cold calling. It's almost like we need to get into a large room with 100 phones, and we need to pick up phones and just start cold calling, because that really, if you can do it, if you can really believe that you're targeting the right person and you've got the right messaging and you've got the right offer and your credibility is established, that when you pick up that phone, as much as you don't want to do it, and you start talking, you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
You're actually doing something very right.
Exactly.
And that's the belief, to Rose's point, I think that maybe we have to get beyond. It's not that I wasn't enjoying this conversation, but I was almost stretching the air, because I have been texting Robert on the side saying, get on this friggin' show.
Come on, Robert, get on the call.
Right now. But knowing this guy, he's probably skating on the ice, knocking 20-year-olds into the boards and scoring goals.
Probably.
But he knows, he knows the microphone is always ready for him.
They take their hockey very seriously in Winnipeg.
This
very
dude
seriously.
Certainly does. This dude, well, it's Robert obviously is one of a kind, and I'm excited to be up in Canada. And I told Karim and Rose, I'll tell you, because I almost can't believe it, is that Robert and I are going to a Leafs game on Tuesday night before the event. I think it's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited about that. And this has been an amazing conversation and turn of events to have Rose join us. And hopefully people have now begun to understand from some people who have been through this, not only when you should stop delegating, but we also brought it full circle as to now when you can delegate, because most of the folks that we work with here at the Ad Sales Elevation Experience, and I know Karim does as well, and Rose is surrounded by, don't really want to do the sales for that long. But you got to have a repeatable process first. That's what we've learned. So 100%. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I always say now that it's a Studio 420. And it's not 420 because of what you're thinking. It's because this apartment is 420. Okay. We happen to live in an apartment. All my buddies are like, oh man, and so was I the first time I heard it. But my wife has been coming back in and out. Our daughter is here. So thank you, everybody, if you've been bearing with us through that. Karim and Rose, it's been wonderful having you. Really appreciate it. And everybody else, Ben, thank you for joining. Robert, wherever the heck you are, we love you. We missed you. And I hope that everybody has gotten a lot out of this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you
guys.
for
Thank you.
letting me jump in as well.
care.
Appreciate that, guys. See you
Have a
soon.
good one.